You have been doing the work. Every night, you close your eyes and you try. You try to see the money in your bank account. You try to see the house, the freedom, the life. You try so hard to feel something real. And every morning, you wake up to the same numbers, the same stress, the same distance between where you are and where you want to be. You are not lazy. You are not unlucky. You are not broken. But you are making one single mistake that is silently canceling every desire you have ever held. And that mistake is not that you are visualizing too little. It is that you are visualizing at all. Abdullah, the mysterious teacher who shaped the entire metaphysical philosophy of Neville Goddard, said something that shattered everything Neville thought he knew about manifesting. He said, "Stop trying to see it. You are already there." That one instruction changed the course of Neville Goddard's life. And today, it is going to change yours. Stay with this. What you are about to hear is not motivation. It is a correction. A precise, ancient correction that separates those who manifest from those who only dream about manifesting. Stop picturing. Start inhabiting. That is the entire difference between the life you have and the life you want. But to understand why, you first need to understand the trap that has been sold to millions of people as spiritual truth. The modern law of attraction movement taught the world to visualize. Create a vision board. See the car. Feel the abundance. Picture yourself on the beach. Repeat it daily. The message was simple, hopeful, and deeply flawed at its root, because it contained a hidden assumption that poisons every image you ever create. When you sit down to visualize money, what is the emotional reality underneath that act? You are a person who does not yet have money, imagining having it. You are a person who is still here, watching a mental movie of being there. The distance is baked into the very structure of the exercise. You are the observer. Your desire is the object. And that gap, that invisible psychological space between you and your desire, is not a detail. It is the entire problem. Neville Goddard taught that the subconscious mind does not respond to images. It responds to states. He said, and these are his exact words, "An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact." Not a visualization, not a picture, an assumption, a state of being already occupied. There is a devastating difference between thinking of the end and thinking from the end. Thinking of the end means you are here, looking at there. It means you are still anchored in the reality of lack, holding the desired outcome at arm's length, admiring it from a distance. It feels spiritual. It feels like effort and focus and discipline. But the subconscious mind reads it as separation. And separation is the state it proceeds to harden into your physical reality. Think about what that means for your finances right now. Every time you have sat down to visualize wealth while feeling the pressure of unpaid bills, the subconscious was not receiving the image of wealth. It was receiving the emotional state of a person who does not have wealth, desperately reaching for it. The image was irrelevant. The state was everything. And the state you occupied was lack. This is not a minor adjustment to your technique. This is a fundamental architectural shift in how you understand the relationship between your inner world and your outer results. Listen carefully, because this is the core of everything that follows. You do not manifest what you see in your mind. You manifest what you are in your mind. You manifest the state you occupy, not the picture you produce. The law of attraction, as popularly taught, gave you a factory with broken machinery. Beautiful conveyor belts, colorful posters, inspiring music, but the mechanism at the center was wrong. Neville Goddard, drawing from his teacher Abdullah and from the deepest roots of biblical metaphysics, rebuilt the factory from the ground up. And the rebuilt factory has one simple, non-negotiable operating principle. You must first be the person who already has it. Pay attention. This is where it shifts. In 1933, Neville Goddard desperately wanted to travel to Barbados. He had not seen his family in years. He had no money for the voyage. He went to his teacher, Abdullah, a mysterious Ethiopian rabbi living in New York, and he told him, "I want to go to Barbados. I need help visualizing the journey." Abdullah looked at him and said something that made no rational sense. He said, "You are already in Barbados." Neville was confused. He was standing in Harlem. He had no ticket, no money, no plan. How could he be already in Barbados? Abdullah refused to engage with the problem. He turned around, went back to his work, and said, "Neville, you are in Barbados. When you are willing to admit that, come back and we will talk." Neville resisted for weeks. He kept returning to the physical evidence of his situation. No ticket, no money, no possibility. He kept trying to figure out how it could happen. But Abdullah would not move. He would not acknowledge any version of reality in which Neville had not already arrived. Something broke open in Neville. He stopped trying to solve the problem. He stopped trying to visualize the voyage. Instead, he assumed the state of a man who was already home. He went to sleep each night feeling the texture of Barbados, not seeing it, but inhabiting it, feeling the warmth of the island, feeling the reunion, feeling the completeness of already having arrived. Within weeks, without money appearing first, without any logical explanation, his brother sent him a first-class ticket to Barbados. Then money arrived for spending. Then everything unfolded. The miracle was not the ticket. The miracle was the shift in state. Neville Goddard described this principle throughout his works with extraordinary consistency. He said, "The great secret is a controlled imagination and a well-sustained attention, firmly and repeatedly focused on the object to be accomplished. But object here is not an image. It is a state. It is the realized feeling of the wish already fulfilled." This is what separates Neville Goddard's teaching from every motivational system ever created. Other systems teach you to pursue your goal. Neville Goddard teaches you to already be the person for whom the goal is a present reality. Think from, not of. That is the instruction. Not think about wealth, but think from the perspective of a person who already has wealth. What does that person notice? What does that person feel in the morning when they wake up? What is the emotional texture of their relationship to money? That texture, that inner posture, that is the thing you must assume. And here is the key insight that makes the Barbados story so powerful for your financial life right now. Abdullah never acknowledged the lack. He refused to let Neville stand in the reality of the problem. Because the moment you engage with the evidence of lack as if it is the final truth, you are confirming and deepening the state of lack. You are making it more real in your subconscious, and the subconscious, faithful and obedient, will continue to build the world that matches the state you are broadcasting. Abdullah did not help Neville visualize a solution. He helped Neville become the person for whom the solution was already a fact. Here is the correction, precise and complete. The subconscious mind does not speak the language of pictures. It speaks the language of feeling. Neville Goddard made this the title of one of his most essential works. Feeling is the secret. Not visualizing, not picturing, feeling. And this distinction is not poetic. It is neurological, metaphysical, and deeply practical. When you force a mental image, you are operating from the conscious mind. The conscious mind is the critic, the analyst, the doubter. It sees the image and simultaneously knows that the image is not real. It knows you are making it up, and that awareness of falseness creates a kind of internal friction that the subconscious registers as resistance. You are pushing. And the deeper law of the mind, which Neville Goddard identified as the law of reversed effort, states that the harder you push, the greater the resistance you generate. Imagine trying to fall asleep by forcing yourself to sleep. The effort itself keeps you awake. The same principle governs wealth manifestation. The harder you try to picture abundance while you are living in the anxiety of scarcity, the more powerfully you are anchoring the state of scarcity. Neville Goddard taught a specific practice that dissolves this problem completely. He called it the state akin to sleep, or SATS. The instruction is deceptively simple. As you are drifting toward sleep, in that soft, receptive space between waking and dreaming, you allow yourself to feel the reality of the wish fulfilled. Not see it. Feel it. Let the body register it. Let the nervous system record it as a memory, not a fantasy. This state is important because the conscious critic is quiet. The resistance is down. The subconscious is open and receptive, like soft soil ready to receive a seed. Whatever you plant in that state, in the form of a felt assumption, takes root without interference. What does this look like for wealth? You do not picture your bank account. You feel the emotion of financial ease, the relaxation of a person who is not worried about money, the quiet confidence of someone whose needs are met, the expansiveness of someone who gives generously because giving is easy. You let that feeling saturate your body. You let it be real, and then you surrender to sleep. That is the practice. That is the technology. The scripture makes this principle explicit. Romans 4, verse 17, which describes infinite intelligence, says, "Who calls things that are not as though they were? Not who pictures things that are not. Who calls them? Who speaks and feels from the reality of them." The biblical metaphysics here is not about hope or wishing. It is about a complete assumption of the reality of the invisible. The psalmist said, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy." But Neville Goddard's reading of this is not passive suffering followed by eventual reward. It is an instruction about the law of sowing. You sow in the world of feeling and assumption. You sow in the invisible interior world of the mind. And the harvest appears in the visible, in the three-dimensional world, in your bank account, in your circumstances, in your relationships, in your health. The subconscious mind is not your enemy. It is your most faithful and powerful servant. But it will only serve the state you actually occupy, not the state you wish you occupied, not the state you are trying to picture. The actual state. The assumed state. The felt state. This is why Joseph Murphy, one of the most important voices in the tradition of mental science, warned repeatedly against what he called mental coercion. Trying to force the subconscious through willpower and repetitive straining is like trying to command a river with your hands. The water does not resist you with hostility. It simply flows around you. The subconscious does not reject your commands. It ignores states that carry the emotional signature of struggle, because struggle is a state too, and it will manifest that instead. Murphy's instruction, echoing Neville Goddard almost perfectly, was this: enter the feeling. Relax into it. Let it be natural. Let the subconscious receive it as given fact, not as a request under pressure. This is where ancient truth meets your actual bank account. Everything you have heard so far is not philosophy. It is a precise operational guide for the way your mind interacts with material reality. And the teachers who built on Neville Goddard's foundation were ruthless in their practicality. Joseph Murphy spent decades working with people in financial desperation. People who had tried everything. Who had made the vision boards, said the affirmations, listened to the recordings, and still watched their circumstances refuse to change. And his diagnosis was almost always the same. They were affirming from the wrong state. They were repeating the words of abundance while saturated with the feeling of lack. And the subconscious, which reads feeling, not words, was receiving the signal of lack, faithfully, continuously, and manifesting accordingly. Murphy wrote in The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, "Your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It accepts what your conscious mind decrees." But the word decree here is the key. A decree is not a wish. A decree is a declaration made from a position of authority, from a position of already established reality. A king does not decree what he hopes might be true. He decrees what is. When you assume the state of a person who already has financial abundance, your subconscious receives that as a decree. When you visualize wealth while feeling the anxiety of its absence, your subconscious receives that anxiety as the decree. The images are irrelevant. The feeling underneath the images is the entire message. Now apply this directly. The law of reversed effort, which Neville Goddard drew from, and which William Blake encoded in his visionary poetry under different names, operates in the financial world with mechanical precision. Blake wrote that you cannot know a thing by its outward form alone. The real thing is the living, feeling reality behind the form. Money is not the goal. The state of ease, of freedom, of sufficiency, of expansion, that is the goal. And that state must be inhabited first, internally and completely, before the external form can appear. This means the modern obsession with manifesting specific dollar amounts is itself a form of the trap. You are not trying to attract a number. You are trying to embody a state. The number is a symbol. The state is the substance. Assume the state of a person who is financially free. Inhabit that state in your feeling and your inner conversation. And the symbols, the money, the opportunities, the connections, will arrange themselves to match the state, because the universe always mirrors state, not effort. William Blake said, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." Translated into the language of wealth manifestation, this means, if you cleanse your perception of the assumption of lack, the infinite supply that already exists within infinite intelligence would become visible and accessible to you. The supply does not need to be created. The door only needs to be opened. And the key to the door is the assumption of its already being open. Infinite intelligence, the divine mind that Neville Goddard identified as the deepest level of your own consciousness, is not withholding your wealth as a test or punishment. It is simply giving you the exact physical equivalent of the state you are occupying. It has no choice. It is law. It operates with the same reliability as gravity. This means there is no pleading, no bargaining, no waiting list. There is only state. Occupy the state of the person who already has what you want, completely and persistently, and the law must produce the corresponding reality. It cannot do otherwise. It is not personal. It is law. You came here looking for a technique. What you found is something more important. You found a correction to the very foundation of how you have been relating to your desires. And that correction is this: you are not a person who is trying to attract wealth. You are infinite intelligence itself, temporarily occupying a human form, with the absolute creative authority to assume any state and watch the physical world rearrange itself to match. Neville Goddard said, "Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes outside his own mind that can affect his life. Every external cause you have blamed, the economy, your past, your circumstances, the people who did not come through, those are not causes. They are effects. They are the residue of states you have previously occupied. They are yesterday's assumptions made visible today. The path forward is not harder visualization. It is a permanent shift in inner posture. It is the daily, disciplined practice of assuming the state of the wish fulfilled, of living from that state in your inner conversations, your emotional reactions, your quiet moments before sleep. It is the practice Abdullah demonstrated to Neville Goddard in the most uncompromising way possible, by refusing to acknowledge any version of reality in which the desired thing was not already true. Stop waiting for the external evidence before you allow yourself to feel the reality of what you want. That is the exact reversal of the law. The feeling must come first. The evidence follows. Always. Without exception. Neville Goddard did not invent a new religion. He revealed the operating system beneath all religion, beneath all scripture, beneath all spiritual tradition. The mystics of every age, from the Kabbalists who understood the infinite generative power of assumption, to the biblical patriarchs who called things that are not as though they were, to the Sufi masters who taught the identity of the seeker and the sought, all of them were pointing at the same irreducible truth. Consciousness is the only cause. State is the only variable. Assumption is the only practice. Your wealth is not somewhere out there waiting to be attracted. It is a state waiting to be assumed. And you have the authority, the faculty, and the absolute metaphysical right to assume it. Right now, tonight, in the silence before sleep. Do this. Stop watching videos about manifesting. This is the last one you need. Close your browser. Lie down. Find that soft, drifting space where the critic goes quiet. And feel, genuinely and completely, the reality of your financial freedom. Not as a picture, as a state, as a memory of something that is already true. Hold it until it feels natural, and then let sleep take you. That is the practice. That is the entire teaching of Neville Goddard compressed into a single act. If this teaching has shifted something in you, if you feel the difference between thinking of and thinking from, then this channel is your home. Subscribe to the Goddard Code. Every week, we go deeper into the living law of assumption, applying the full legacy of Neville Goddard to every dimension of your modern life, your wealth, your relationships, your health, your freedom. Join the community of those who have stopped hoping and started assuming. The link is below. We will see you in the next one. And we leave you with words from Neville Goddard himself, the instruction he returned to again and again throughout a lifetime of teaching. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and observe the route that your attention follows. Not the image, not the effort, the feeling, the assumption, the state. You already have what you are looking for. Now go be it.